Let's do it. All right, so let's get this party started, shall we? So, on behalf of the Australian Business Events Association Sustainability Special Interest Group, I'd love to welcome you all today to this hopefully very informative webinar. I hope you all take something away from this today. I'm certainly excited to hear about everything that Gregor has to tell us. First of all, before we get cracking, I'd like to take a quick moment to acknowledge country. I'm coming to you today from Gadigal country, otherwise known as sunny Sydney, and I pay my respects to Australia's First Nations people. All 250 plus language groups and nations who collectively cared for this huge and ecologically diverse continent that we share today for over 65,000 years. Certainly a lot that we can learn from Australia's Aboriginal people. Now, talking about a wide scale collaborative approach to sustainability. What a segue I set myself up for there. I'm really looking forward to hearing from our speaker today, Gregor, who has very generously given his time all the way from Europe at the crack of dawn to discuss with us the International Federation of Exhibition and Event Services, or IFES for short, or IFES for short, their Better Stands framework, which is, if you haven't heard of it yet, an incredible circular economy initiative that is helping to unify the global events and exhibition industry to drive or sweep across the globe with sustainable and carbon reduction outcomes for exhibitors, service providers, and organisers alike. So I will get started by formally introducing our wonderful speaker, Gregor Bischoff. Gregor is the current Executive Director of IFES, which is the global network of leading exhibition and event services providers. Hopefully everyone on the call has heard of IFES before. Before joining IFES, Gregor spent around 25 years in senior roles within multinational exhibition organisers, including RX, formerly known as Reed Exhibitions, for those of you who have been around for a while, in which role he helped to oversee business development and strategic growth across international event portfolios. With this deep industry experience and strong global network, Gregor is passionate about driving collaboration and innovation towards advancing sustainability across the global exhibition and events industry ecosystem. And also on the line with us today is the wonderful Diane Leadham. Diane is Australia's IFES and Better Stands champion, for lack of a better description. And Diane will be here on the line as well. And I'm throwing her in the deep end here without previous consultation, but I'm sure that Diane will be happy to answer any questions that you might have from a uniquely Australian perspective following Gregor's presentation. And I would also like to introduce Roger Lena, who is joining Gregor, a new colleague of Gregor's, and I'll leave it over to Roger to introduce himself when he takes the stage, if he chooses to. Without further ado, over to you, Gregor. Really looking forward to the presentation. And sorry, one bit of housekeeping. If I could please just make sure everyone has their microphones on mute so that Gregor has a nice clean stage. And we will hold questions to the end of the presentation, but do feel free to pop them in the chat window if you'd like. That will help you to keep them fresh in your mind. Thank you. Over to you.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And in general, if the mics are not on mute, I'll just speak louder. But that's fine. I'll make myself heard. First of all, thank you to you guys, Australian Business Events Association, for having us, and for Diane, obviously, for making that connection since last year. Because, as you said, International Federation of Exhibition and Event Services, and yet when I joined, or still to some degree, well, we are global, and yet there's lots of room for growth to be global and making exactly the global collaboration work in our industry, because that's what I love doing. I love connecting people. I love this trade show industry for, as you unfortunately said, over 25 years. But yes, I do love it, and I particularly love coming with the background of the organizer, because my joke is always I've left the dark side to join the light side. By that, I don't mean that organizers are bad, but if we're but if we're honest, this whole ecosystem of trade shows only works with service providers, because Venues are black holes, nothing but that, nice black holes. Organizers have great ideas, but not, in the end, nothing but air. And then we come in as the service providers and we put in light. So, but only if the three of us work together, my old me, the organizer side, my new or current me, the service provider side, if the three of us work together for our exhibitors and visitors, that's the best thing. And that's exactly what we also need to do with regards to Better Stands, because he said it. How many years looking backwards on Australia with your lovely continent, the whole world? Why do we got to do something? Because well, there is an ecological problem out there, and that's why I'm passionate about Better Stands, and why I love working on Better Stands, particularly with IFAS, because we are in the middle of it, as the association for the service provider side. With me, yes, indeed. Quick word from Roger, because you said it everything perfectly, Jess, is about me, is Roger. Very quickly, Roger, two words from you. What are you doing? Why are you here? And then we get into it.
Hello, everyone. Very, very glad to be here with you all. Thanks for the invite. So yeah, I've joined as Better Stands project manager just less than 2 weeks ago now, and I used to work for IMEX. I've been with IMEX about 15 years and got an insight into the business events industry through that. I've always been passionate about sustainability, and in that role have worked with Better Stands as an organizer in the pilot phase for about 2-3 years. So I've seen Better Stands from the organizer side, and I'm very glad to now be on the inside, and help to manage Better Stands in this phase of expansion. So that's my role. I'm going to be first contact for all different roles, for people who want to be part of Better Stands.
Cool. Thanks, Roger. And he will jump in whenever he knows it better from experience, having worked on Better Stands, well, already for quite some time. But what are we talking about? In the end, Better Stands is nothing but we want to move towards something. We are not talking about bad or shaming or whatever anybody has been doing in the past. We just want to move towards something, and that's reusable stands. And that's what we want to do together as an ecosystem, again, meaning exhibitors, venues, organizers, and service providers, because only if all of us work together, then we make it happen and we transition to something better stands. So towards something better. And in the end, Better Stands is uniting the industry, because it is an industry initiative from various angles. And well, why does the global event industry need Better Stands? I already said it. Because we need to do something as the industry to make this place worth. And from a personal aspect, I have 2 kids. I want them to live in a pretty decent place as well. So that's what drives me straight away to support any sustainable initiative that's out there. And when you look at the statistics, or at just at this brief graph of where is the waste coming from, when we're looking at events, you obviously see that the biggest chunk is coming from travel, but then you see the biggest chunk is coming from space design and production. And that's the thing that we can affect, because another fact or reality is we don't want to stop trade shows, because that's what's needed out there still. But so we cannot stop travel, or we don't want to stop travel, but certainly let's see what we can influence, and that is actually the waste side of things. So in the end, that means we got to start somewhere, because it is a freaking big challenge that we have there, to move towards sustainability and move away from single-use stands and the lots of waste that we all see and luckily see to a decreasing bit at the trade shows. But you got to start something with a very small and simple thing. And one of the easiest things in the end is saying, well, and it doesn't need to be a rocket scientist to realize that when you use let's say stuff, whatever sorts of material or production parts of the stand that you use, if you use it more than once, then certainly that reduces your CO2 emission. And well, because you are limiting the waste at a trade show, because you don't throw it away after the first use, you throw it away after the second use, speaking in simple terms. And one of the good things is indeed there is many materials that you cannot only use twice, but I know aluminum frames, for instance, from our friends, I call them the aluminum collective. So the aluminum frames, for instance, you can use them as an average 120 times before you gotta get before they go into waste. So there is truly something very simple and straightforward to be done with regards to sustainability. And that means in the end, you can work with shell schemes, you can work with modular stand concepts, with rental concepts, etc. pp. Because in the end, all of what we together as service providers and as organizers need to achieve, we need to educate exhibitors in the first place, or in the final stage, that there is reusable stand constructions out there with which you can build anything you want. So there is no need for any special customized design anymore, because everything can be done with reusable solutions. So what is Better Stands? In the end, it is what it says. It is a form in order to improve the stands and the stand build that we do have. But yes, it is the main driver for it is to be sustainable, but at the same time, it is safer, because you prepare everything in the sweatshop there or in the workshop that you do before, so you don't have to do it on site. It is cleaner because you can do it in your facility, prepare everything, and then in the end, the waste that you do have put aside in a responsible way. It is quicker during build up, most likely. And then last but not least, because you're using it more than once, you most likely will build it with a higher quality. So there is many benefits into in the end, also feeding into the sustainable or sustainability aspect. Last but not least, or not last but not least, but in the end, what we did, speaking of simplicity, we wanted to make sure, or when Informa introduced the Better Stand scheme, it was, well, how do we do that best? How do we give criteria to a framework, how we can assess the various stands and booths and solutions that are out there. And in the end, it is a very simple solution, because no matter where you look around this globe, every stand consists of 10 categories. And those categories in the end start from what's happening on the floor, because even if you don't have one, there is a floor to start with, and it goes all the way up into the air with your riggings and with your banners or whatever you have up in the air. Or you don't, but still, in principle, every stand has those 10 categories. So it's stands, it's platform, it is the furniture, all the way up to the graphics. And within those 10 categories, Better Stands says, our aim is to say, okay, there's basically there is four simple ways to rate any booths. There is the single use, which in the end, well, you're not doing anything at this stage or very limited at this stage, which doesn't fulfill the first very simple things, which is stand construction, platform, furniture, and equipment, in order to get to the first stage with it, which is the bronze level, and then going all the way up to gold. So it is no shaming of anybody saying, hey, look, you are just a bronze status. You are doing great. You are already doing something. And here is what else you can improve. Just look at our framework. There is another 6 categories where you most likely, with not too much effort, can improve. Are we saying that the gold standard is going to be the last one? Potentially, as we evolve, there may be a platinum or diamond, etc. pp. When we want to get more granular going forward, because again, we want to start with something simple that everybody, wherever on his path towards sustainability is coming from, can start with. And also we are being very simple, because it is simple question, yes or no. And the question being, is it single use or is it being reused? Yet there is the caveat. 2 things we have expanded the question a little bit. So what's not only asking, is it reused or single use, but we have also the element of recycling with regards to floor covering and graphics, because we all know how a carpet looks after 3 days or 5 days of trade show. That's very often very hard to reuse. Because there may be wine, there may be beer, there may be some bolognese on the floor, so that you don't want to use it again, or simply cannot use it again. So again, it's a 10-point framework, very simple, yes and no questions, not much data needed, so that everybody, no matter where on the path of sustainability you are, that you can start using that. In general, we have 2 ways of how you can participate in Better Stands, and both in the end always leads to the categories bronze, silver, and gold. But we have one way is to do an assessment already pre the event, so prior to the show, and the second one is to do it fully on site at the show. The advantage, obviously, of doing it pre-show, and for that we have built an online platform, is to be able to submit and do the questionnaire prior to the event. You get a certificate prior, or a rating prior to the event, so that in the end you can also, and I'm skipping to the other side, which is better. So that means that you already get, prior to the show, you get your certificate and your rating, and you, as a service provider, as an exhibitor, as an organizer, can announce to the world what you are doing, because then you can promote to the industry, to other exhibitors, to other service providers, to what degree you have been making progress or what you've been achieving already. You can celebrate it during the show and then continue in the next year. If you are doing it on site, which is also a viable solution, then certainly we have assessors coming into the show that do a full assessment on site, go from stand to stand, and then the rewarding of the various types of categories, so which bands Better Stands rating is achieved, is being done afterwards, missing a little bit the trick to promote what you are doing out there in order to drive sustainability. Because in the end, yes, it is good what we are doing, everybody involved in Better Stands, and yet we got to be active and spread the word how easy it is to, again, be part and make an impact on sustainability and reducing the waste and CO2 footprint. Anything to add, Roger, from your perspective as a user of Better Stands, from the organizer perspective, from the last 5 years, most likely already, right?
Just to add from the organizer side, what was really convincing was really the simplicity, because as you said in the beginning, the challenge when you ever walk an exhibition floor during the construction or the teardown phase, you see all the chaos in many cases. You see all the waste piling up at the end, and it just seems like an unsurmountable challenge. And the key point of Better Stands is the simplicity of the framework, because while there are certainly service providers out there who are already building gold stands and are already doing very good work, there are many out there who are not yet on that path. And through the simplicity, what Better Stands tries to do is to invite everyone to see, look, we don't want any complicated framework where you get a questionnaire with 99 questions and you need to submit a certificate for every single thing that you do. But it's a 10-point framework. The aim is to make it global so that it's a standardized assessment throughout, so that service providers get used to the framework. They already know the questions. They already know how to talk about Better Stands and how to address the points wherever they go. And that is really what where I see the benefits in Better Stands, that it's simple to address. And as Gregor said, there might be a future iteration where once everyone is on a silver or gold level, we can then go further. Or there are already other frameworks out there, other certifications that look at the carbon footprint of a stand, or there are others that integrate with Better Stands for those who already want to go further. But the aim is to bring everyone to that minimum standard to build reusable stands, and then we can go further and look at the other elements. So that's really the key message, the simplicity that makes it adoptable for everyone.
Yeah, and well, actually, who is Better Stands? Because I've been talking about it is from the industry for the industry, and here's a little bit of history. I was with Reed Exhibitions when just prior to COVID, when RX started started with having a dedicated sustainability manager. There was one person, and she needed support from the various regions, from the various business units. I was, as business development director in Germany, with business development, you tend to give them a lot of other thing that nobody else wanted to do. So they needed help from the various regions for sustainability efforts with the Sustainability Council, to which, again, I said, absolutely, I want to do that. Not that I would not have been given it anyways, but I volunteered because, again, I have 2 kids, I want to do something. But when we started looking at RX, at various options out there, so what is the guidance that we want to give our show teams at hand so that they talk to exhibitors, that they talk to service providers? What are we going to do? And when we looked around, we certainly saw and knew of the Better Stands initiative from Informa, but and also that may not be a secret, with Informa and RX being fierce competitors in the markets. Better Stands was a little bit like the holy water, so that we said never gonna join that. So that's why it is extremely pleasing to see that then a couple of years, so roughly 3 years ago, it was I don't know the full details about the story about that, but what I take from it is UFI wanted to do something in order also to make sure that we drive sustainability efforts in the industry. Yet they wanted to start something completely new, which was nonsense, because in the end they realized, well, we already have Better Stands because it is so simple. Everybody agrees. And instead of now coming up with a 9-point framework, calling it even Better Stands, or well, not so bad stands. The story around that was, well, let's put it on a neutral ground. Let's make sure that we as associations, organizers, service providers, assessors and venues connect around it, and the secretariat and the management of Better Stands should be on a neutral ground. And that neutral ground became then IFES as the secretariat. Because why IFES? Because we, as the International Federation of Exhibition and Service Providers, and that is meant with, again, no disrespect, we all know who's having the most interaction with exhibitors. That is service providers, because they talk to them on a even more regular basis than any organizers, and talk to them about stand build. Because again, having been on the sales side and an organizer side, I know they are talking about square meters, and yes, if there is a package, then that's been sold. But really digging deep about and talking about the options that are out there, that's being done for the service providers. So it was good that it's being put on a secretariat, with IFES being the home to that and managing that whole aspect. Yet at the same time, again, bringing organizers like Clarion, Informa, Montgomery, you name them, all to the table. Not everybody has joined yet, but the good thing is there is no more any hard feelings against a product from one of their kind, because it is on a neutral basis. So within those categories, we are working together, or we've worked tirelessly since basically end of 2024, making governance rules, who does what, who's in charge of what, in order to bring Better Stands forward. So in the end, it is built by the industry. We know it is definitely not perfect with everything, because it is, again, so simple, making sure that everybody can work along the 10-point framework from every various aspects. And at a next iteration stage, then we can get into data collection, etc. pp. But again, we want to make it for everybody an easy start on that path. Yeah, it's usually a little bit interesting for me to talk about the benefits of Better Stands for service providers and also for organizers, because in the end, if you're a Better Stand participant or member, certainly that sticks out to other to exhibitors in the end, because you can prove and you can show them you are building sustainable booths, which is sort of a competitive advantage, because I always keep telling a story also from my RX days, when I was running a show for Promotional Article, trying to get BMW to come to that show and just source for products. And they said, no point in us coming, because we need to understand the grade or degree of sustainability already. To which I said to my back then bosses, I said, well, this is only the exhibitor side. Now imagine exhibitors are starting talking about what sustainable booth or how sustainable is our booth. If we cannot provide any information on that, they may just skip it in full. So yeah, definitely as a service provider, being being a participant and member is seen as a competitive advantage, and we always give guidance on what else you can do better going forward as a service provider, because we have a regular working groups, getting together and talking about challenges and opportunities out there. And also, I already said it initially, it is also a cost saving factor when you think about it. If you start thinking every stand modular, then it is a cost saving factor for the exhibitor as well as for a service provider, because again, if you have everything in modules, you can play a little bit with it like Lego. And that doesn't not necessarily only mean that you always need to do it in aluminum framing, but you can do it in any material, also in wood, etc. pp. Also, what are the benefits for organizers in the end? Because, as we said, for service providers, you have the four benefits as on the prior page, but also for organizers, it is there is a ready-to-use program an easy to embed program with a 10-point framework, with assessors being ready to come to your show, with a platform, an online platform where we can provide data and a dashboard so that the organizer understands what is the impact of Better Stands, how is my show performing with regards to sustainability in the end. And also there again, we provide induction to them, to any organizer, and making sure that you get the right material at hand. Also, again, to convince your service providers and for them to convince their exhibitors in the end to participate in the program. Because as I keep repeating myself, I know it is a very long path that we have ahead of us, and we just got to go very slow and start at the basis and on a very low level. This one I'm going to skip. I just wanted to kind of finishing off before I give the floor a little bit to ideally some questions around it, is just sharing 2-3 images of what we can do with Better Stands, because on the left-hand right side, you see something very similar or something very simple, modular stand, just a wall, even made from wood, lighting around it, and some furniture. And it's all, as you can see, well, if you get very close to your screen, you can see that it's made from wood. But you also can see that it gets as sophisticated, and that's the B-Matrix stand on Euroshop, which just happened a couple of weeks ago, where they even had a little waterfall built here, or at least the image of a waterfall. Why is this a Better Stands? Because yes, certainly you have aluminum, you have some wood modules, you have the lightning LEDs that you'll be reducing, but this is all, when I first saw it, when I walked into the show, I said, how is that going to work with Better Stands? But then they obviously told me, well, we're going to reuse it at other shows that we do in smaller degrees, and some parts of that are going into our showroom. So it is fully reused, and that's the most important thing. And as we are not only talking about Better Stands, but we are also walking Better Stands. We had a 700 square meter pavilion at Euroshop ourselves as IFES, with some 30 of our members as a pavilion. And also that was fully built alongside of the guidelines of Better Stands, meaning, and that's the one on the right-hand side, as you can tell, that means we had the flooring, we had the carpet, we had the furniture, up to the fabrics up in the air, everything alongside of the Better Stands, being in the position to answer, yes, it is being reused, or as you can see, there is lots of fabrics up in the air, which we had recycled through one of our members, luckily. So there is no limits to what with Better Stands can be achieved, and yet it is always simple and effortless to drive forward, because also, as I think Roger said, and I know it, service providers or nobody really has time to do something extra and provide information as much as we all love giving information, but it is extra work, and with the days already being quite filled, so I've done the assessment for Better Stands, not the assessment. I've done the filling in of information of a Better Stands myself into our platform. 10 questions, 10 times yes, no. Yes, I needed to provide some backing information. What is the material? Who's the provider? But that was it. So very simple what I had anyways. And I'm no project manager. I always need to make sure of that. I'm just a guy from an organizer. So very little I know about the service provider side. And I was able to fill it all in. And it was very straightforward, because that's what's needed to progress on that path. The good thing is right now we're talking to roughly 60 organizations around the world, from all various countries. 400 events are being assessed already in the pilot phase, and also now in, as I call it, in Better Stands 2.0, progressing the way forward. some of the names on the list you may recognize. That's just a snapshot of some of our members who are already part of, and there you obviously can see IMEX, which is Roger. So Roger comes in really having worked with it and being convinced, because otherwise, most likely he wouldn't start working with us if he would not have been convinced in the past to drive this forward. And last but not least, just a few of the all familiar faces and people that we all know from the industry who are convinced that Better Stance is the right way forward. And one thing needs to be also stressed at the end. There is many initiatives out there. And I'm not, or we are not saying Better Stance is the only and the right one. Our job as an association certainly is giving guidance. And when we started promoting and working with other associations around Better Stance, we did one interesting exercise for 4 weeks where we looked at various offerings out there in the market. And we very quickly realized, so there is, not going into too much depth, there is at least 40 management processes, ratings, certificates, guidelines, whatever you want to have out there in the market. And the good thing about them is all of them are complementary. So again, you can start with something simple as Better Stance, which we are promoting to start with, because we're the secretariat for that. At the same time, you can go as deep as ISO 20121 if you want to, but that means much more work is needed in order to progress on that path. And that's more or less everything on Better Stance to this date that we have. And I don't know if, Roger, you want to add something. Otherwise, I would give the floor to everybody out there for questions, comments, criticism, whatever you want to say.
I'd like to invite questions from the group.
Yes.
I have one to start.
Good. I knew you had.
I'm coming to you from a venue point of view. I'm the sustainability manager here at ICC Sydney, and I'm sure there's other people here on the call that are in a similar position to me as the manager for their venues. And we are often the ones at the end of an incredible major exhibition left having to sweep up and find something to do with, let's say sometimes up to 30 tons of dry waste out of the one exhibition. So something like this for us on that final life cycle piece of the exhibition waste would be an incredible advancement for us to help reduce our waste footprint as a venue. What role do you think venues have to play in being able to push this framework through to those organisers and service providers that we work with on a daily basis on some of these major events?
Yeah, I think, in the end, I think it's everybody that needs to push, and there doesn't need to be a particular push from any angle, right? Because in the end, we all should be pushing together. That's the most important thing. But at the same time, you as a venue, being part of the whole ecosystem, certainly you have two things that you want to achieve. A, as you said, you don't want to be sitting there at the end of the event with 30 tons of waste that actually, well, you don't even know where they belong to, worst case, because everybody's just chucking them on a big pile. And secondly, obviously, you want to overall reduce the waste. So with that whole ecosystem, you certainly can and should be demanding from your organizations to work on a simplified way, like with Better Stance, making sure that in the end also the exhibitors understand it is a factor in order to reduce the waste. And that can only be pushed from you towards your organizers or your own organization with events, pushing service providers, pushing exhibitors. So it is a triangle going downwards with whoever is on top of it, because service provider can start pushing into the various directions as well. Certainly pushing towards the exhibitor, and yet pushing towards the organizer and venue as well, saying you need to participate in that as well, because otherwise I'm having a competitive advantage, which is great for me, yet you don't want that to happen as other organizers and venues, right?
Absolutely. Thanks for that. I have another question. Um, if I was an event organizer and I was interested in bringing the framework in to apply it to my whole exhibition, what would the process be like for that in the Australian context, particularly in terms of, I think you mentioned having an assessor come in, a third-party assessor.
Yeah.
It'd be really interesting to hear for the group how, if anyone here is interested in giving it a crack, what that technical process would be, how to get involved. And also my other question is, say it was a rather large exhibition, like an RX exhibition, how long could someone reasonably expect it would take for an assessor to go through that event and apply the 10-question framework to all the stands? That was a big one.
Hey, Gregor, I might jump in for a second here, Gregor. Just sorry, Jess, because we have an assessor here. So Euro Displays and Adelaide Expo Hire in Australia are already members of Better Stands. There might be others, but I'm aware of Michael and ourselves. And Evan from our organisation is an assessor. So he's done the course. So he's able to obviously assess stands within Australia. And obviously there's loads of other assessors like Stuart Mann in the UK. We recently had one of our stands assessed and received gold, which was wonderful, by Stuart Mann. So went through the whole Better Stands process. And it took, I would say, similar to what Gregor's saying, you have to submit all your information, and then the assessor will go through it and come back to you with any questions of other information that you need to add. So you do have an opportunity after the first time you've submitted if there's an area where they think they don't have enough information. So it's not just, okay, you're only silver and that's it. The assessor will come back to you and say, okay, for your signage, for example, how are you recycling that? And then we were able to, our client was going to be using those fabrics again the following year. So, and then we eventually recycle it through Blocktex. So it was able to get that final tick, because often it's the signage that is I don't know if that's how you found, Gregor, in your experience, and Roger too, but that's usually the hurdle, the flooring, the carpet, and also the signage that people are unable to say that they're always reusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say it took, if you've got all your information together, the assessor can come back to you. It's overnight, but.
So a really quick process if you wanted to deliver it on the day almost.
Yeah, well, theoretically. And I was going to say, coming back to your initial question, how to get on board for an organizer at the same time, and how long for an overall show, because as Diane said, with one stand, if you do it pre-show, then it's rather straightforward. And you, as you said, or as Diane said, theoretically overnight. And if there is a question, it goes back and forward. Very simple. But back to your, again, initial question, how long or what's the process for an organizer to join? And Roger, and then over to you, Keelan, I think.
Yeah, so there are various ways for organizers to join, and there is the process. If a service provider is a member and builds one stand as an event, yes, they can get that stand certified, and they can certainly talk about that. But if an organizer wants to take part with their whole event, they need to become member of Better Stands themselves, and there are a number of different ways how to enter, because not every organizer is the same. So there is the opportunity to take part with the whole event, the whole shebang. Every single stand is assessed by an assessor. And that is certainly a longer process. It might take, depending on the size of the exhibition, it might take 1, 2, maybe even 3 assessors who are on site throughout the whole event period. So that is a very big commitment. there are also other ways to be officially part of Better Stand by just taking a sample. If doing the whole event to begin with is not feasible for an event, or if they just want to take a little bit of an idea of where they stand, that's also an option to take a sample, and that then reduces the efforts that are needed for assessors as well. Obviously, as it is with samples, it won't give the complete picture, but it'll give them an insight, and they'll see the benefits of knowing maybe where they have to focus on and who they need to engage with to then move on to higher levels in the future.
Thanks for that, Roger. It's really quite positive to hear that it is scalable depending on the event needs. Over to you, Keelan. You had a question. I think you might be on mute. Oh, there we go.
You can probably hear me now.
Oh, yes, there we have you.
Sorry. I work in technology, and of course, it's a Busman's holiday here. So, thank you so much for hosting, Jess and Roger and Gregor. Thank you so much for the amazing information. Just putting it out there, AV1, we're a B Corp, there, that thing there, and which is another ESG measure certification. I would love to, I'm not trying to do an us and them scenario. I think it's all us. If we can get this together, I am all about building supply chains, sustainable supply chains. So I've talked to a lot of clients, prospects, industry people, whoever, and want to put out there the idea of sustainability and all the ESG stuff. So I want to include Better Stands and any Better Stands members and anyone else for that matter that's flying that flag. So just hit me up on that. I've set up some community groups as well that I'd love to include you in, and it's just about the better for the world factor. And I have to say, this Better Stands concept is fantastic. B Corp seems like a, you talk about ISO 2012 thing, B Corp is like that. It's full on. It's expensive, it's long, it's difficult, it's a long process. This looks like something that's quite comprehensive still, but really appropriate and practical. Yeah. So well done. Look forward to seeing more.
And again, as I said, that's the important thing, and that's why we always make the statement. Yes, Better Stands is not the only thing out there, and I remember having been sitting it was in the European UFI conference last year in Thessaloniki, in the working group sustainability. Everybody was saying, well, we need a very simple standard that needs to be applicable for every show, for every organizer, that needs to be understood by every service provider, by every exhibitor. And we had our presentation on Friday at 1:00, and so the working groups were happening on Tuesday, Wednesday, and I was always saying, wait for Friday. We have a solution. It's very simple. It is yes and no, and it is globally applicable. And yet it is important to say, yes, we want everybody to advance and get highly scientific around it, with having a full management process behind it that's only working on sustainability, etc. pp. And yet we have to face the reality. There is companies out there in my membership or in our membership, well, that's 5 people, or even less. How are they supposed to do that? They can't. They have a loading list for their stand that they are building at whatever show in Sydney, Cape Town, wherever. So that information they have. So let's work with what we have and build on that basis going forward. Because again, we got to start somewhere. It's an MVP. We are working on Better Stands to make that more sophisticated. And even at this stage, there is other projects and programs and solutions out there that are complementary, because we have solutions out there that are looking at the full event, that are looking at an exhibition stand only as Better Stands, that look at your whole trade show presence, etc. pp. And that's the important thing. Absolutely. Any other? Yes,
Michael.
Michael.
Thanks, Jess. Gregor, thank you for your presentation. And you might want to comment, or Diane yourself. The 10 key elements of the stand, I'm looking at it and go tick, 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 tick. You know, I think we're pretty good with a lot of them. How do we see more information of what we need to answer for the next step, please?
Sorry, to ask which next step you mean? You mean what information you need to
yes.
provide?
So I'm looking at your 10 key elements, and I go, yes,
Yep.
we do that, yes, we do that, yes, we do that.
Yep.
Obviously, there's more information and data you need besides just ticking a box.
Yes, absolutely, because otherwise it would be, well, everybody would say yes, right? We want to see some form of proof. So there is two things, and then Diane and I let Diane as an assessor comment on that. So if we do the pre-show assessment, which is fully then online done, we make sure that the service provider that we are working with in Better Stance is accredited. So we have a quick process before that, making sure that this service provider is already behaving in a sustainable means, so that they can be trusted per se to start with. And that is done with ESSA alongside of their sustainability criteria of a company. So very simple, also very straightforward. And then the information alongside of the that you need to submit is basically just giving the information, what material and what supplier is it in the end, alongside with a plan. Because again, as Diane, all the other assessors, they know what they're doing, and are not just starting, and are very used to work with floor plans, also from a health and safety aspect, can read loading lists, know most of the suppliers. And if they are not sure, they ask more questions. So again, it is information that you have at hand anyways from an order with one of your suppliers, but that is everything that you need.
So as a Better Stands member, and we want to give a stand a crack, what do I do?
Okay, Diane?
Yeah. So Michael, if you go onto the Better Stands website, and then you'll select an assessor. And then once you've selected an assessor, you'll send a request through to them, and they'll email you back, and they'll set you up within the website, and only you can see it, obviously, and you access that. And that's where you place all your information in to meet the 10 requirements. So you'd be sending in your design, photos of the stand, and then explaining the materials that are used for each category. So it goes through each category, and then you submit your information for each category, and then you're assessed on each category. So up to the bronze level, then up to the silver level, and up to the gold level. And then they'll come back to you and say, okay, Michael, yep, at the moment you're at silver. If you can provide additional information about the type of material you're using for the flooring, and if that flooring is going to be reused or it's going to be recycled or repurposed for another use, then, you can get to gold. And then you'll just have to provide that additional information. And then they'll give you an overall
And yet
assessment.
to add for you to what you can, as Diane said, or you just email Roger, info@betterstands.org, or me, saying, hey, I want to join, and then we make sure that we get you on board with Better Stands as a service provider straight away, getting you through the accreditation process, which again is very straightforward, and then gets you listed as an accredited service provider, so that you can use the platform. We usually have induction calls or onboarding calls with our service providers, as well as we do with assessors, as well as we do with organizers, as well as we will be doing with venues going forward, making sure that everybody gets a little bit more than this half or 45 minutes talking about Better Stands, and really understands the dedicated process for you, from which angle you are coming in order to participate in Better Stands.
But as Michael is already a member, he can directly access it.
Yeah. So can I go on and get the requirements before I decide I want X stand to be assessed?
I'm not sure actually. We selected an assessor, and then that assessor then sent the details, the login to go into it. And then we went through it. So I'm not sure if you can then decide not to do it. I'm sure you could. I suppose you could just email the assessor and decide not to go ahead, but
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Full steam ahead, Michael. Love to hear it.
Ready
Well,
to give one a go.
well, if no one else has any questions, we might wrap it up there and
Hello.
thank.
I've
Hello.
got a question.
Hi, Louisa.
Hi, Jess. How are you?
Good to
Hello,
see you
Louisa.
again.
Hi. My name is Louisa. I'm the sustainability manager at Exponent here in Australia. We are a service provider. And thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. My question is if this the Better Stance platform has been used as a community, a connecting platform for different companies around the world. So let's say if exhibitor or a organizer is coming from a different country, they want to connect with a service provider, does the Better Stance website work as a connecting platform? So let's say Exponent is a member of the Better Stance initiative, and that way we can connect with potential international companies. I don't know if this has been used in Europe in this way, or what are your thoughts about that?
Roger, you want to answer?
I can give you a little bit more info on that. So the platform as such isn't used to connect people at the moment. But what we do have is on the website, there is on the public website, you can see the list of members. So you can see all the members and you can find them in the countries that you're looking for. But on top of that, Better Stance really is a very active community. So the different streams, the organizers, the service providers, the assessors, and so on, they have working groups. And as an organizer myself, I have found this extremely valuable to for one, just hear from other organizers some of their events, what they do, and also to have access of this community to ask, oh, I know you've had an event, sometimes even in the same venue where we were, and we were able to ask, well, how did you do this? Who did you connect with? Which were the people that helped you? Or just generally, if you want to try something out, you can ask the group, well, has anyone ever done this? What have been your experiences? So that's really the working groups are very, very active. And because it's non-competitive, in the program in itself is non-competitive, everyone is really willing to share their best practice and to help each other out, because ultimately we all know it helps the bigger purpose and it will help everyone.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you, Louisa and Roger. Now we are at time. I can see that Keelan has popped a couple more questions in the chat, and he's also helpfully popped a link for you, Louisa, with a list of Better Stand members for you in there. So you might want to jump in and check that out.
Thank you.
I don't know if we have time to get to Keelan's questions.
No problem. We can all read them in your own time.
But I can see that Bernie there has also provided a little bit of a response to you as well. And let this be the start of a great conversation. Thank you to Roger. Thank you to Gregor. Thank you to Diane. This has been really informative. I don't think I've had a post-presentation chat as robust as this. The question time was really excellent. I think we all took away something from this particular webinar. I certainly will be following up. I've got some questions around assessing, and I'm sure you'll be hearing from a lot of us that attended this session moving forward. So again, thank you so much for your time. I think this is very much eye-opening for us here in the Australian ecosystem, and I look forward to seeing Better Stands really take off here down under.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you very much. Thank you for bringing this group together and giving us the opportunity.
And again, we'll share the meeting
afterwards. My
afterwards.
day, and you're almost done for the day. Thank you.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time.
Bye.
Care.